welcome back to the class, everyone. We've officially talked about all the great leadership, unique, and special Zetas. But now it's time to talk about something I've been avoiding for a little bit now, and that's the bad ones. So as always, this video is aimed to be educational. We're not going to go through and just try to find a bunch of Zetas to make people feel bad about their investment, but we're trying to go through and take an analytical look at every single one of these characters that we have on our top 10, or I guess bottom 10 list for Zetas, and just educate people a little bit on what you can or can't or should or shouldn't invest in. And I will say just right up front, I have over half of them. So again, goal isn't to shame, but it is to educate. So first off, we're going to be starting off with Chrysanthemum. And this one is a little bit awkward, and we're actually going to talk about this a little bit more with Gamard in regards to a certain fallacy that exists in lots of parts of the game, and that is, if the character is good, give him X, Y, or Z. So like if the character is good, then he obviously needs R8. If the character is good, he obviously needs the Omicron. If the character is good, he obviously needs the Zeta. And Chrysanthemum has kind of fallen into this pit a little bit because he is not only a really good character, but he's also on one of the best teams in the entire game, being the Java team that is used in a ton of game modes and really excels. The big issue with it is the Zeta. If you're not getting the Omicron, so if you're getting the Omicron, cool. But if you're not getting the Omicron, the Zeta is literally useless. It does nothing. And I don't just mean situationally does nothing. I mean it literally does nothing. So if we open up as champion of the fighting pitch, which is where Zeta is on the level 7 here, it says that Dismember no longer starts on cooldown, and its cooldown is reset at the start of each encounter. That kind of starts to look good. The only issue is the really only team that Chrysanthemum will go with is Java, and that's because he's not only a perfect fit there, but a lot of his kit is trapped behind being with Hut Cartel, specifically Hut Cartel Leader. But if we go over to the Hut Cartel Galactic Legend Leader, Java himself, he specifically says in his kit, at the start of each encounter, Hut Cartel allies had their cooldowns reset, of which Chrysanthemum is a Hut Cartel ally. So if you're using it with Java, which you really should be, if you have this character unlocked at all, then you're going to want to be using him with Java, and the Zeta is ultimately useless. So that is going to be covering our first one there. Second up is going to be Magna, and I referred to the Magna fallacy earlier, and I guess we're just kind of making up terms right now. And basically what this fallacy again is, if the character is good, he needs all the things. And Magna really kind of applies to this because Magna is not only a good character, but he's also required for a General Skywalker unlock, which can be difficult and frustrating. And you have a tendency to just look at every single character that's being used in that mission and just start throwing upgrades on. Like, oh, B1 should be R5, which she actually should be. That's a really bad example. Or Asajj should have her leadership Zeta, which really doesn't do anything for that specific fight. And then you might even get over to Magna and look at this Zeta, and it really just doesn't do anything for his character anywhere at all. If no buffs were dispelled, reset the cooldown of this ability. So Magna Guard's job isn't to have a stun on his special. Magna Guard's job is to tank and to cleanse and to give General Grievous speed up and to die to be able to give General Grievous a bonus turn and have like one last finishing move off. He has a lot of jobs. He's a good character. He's a good tank. He stealths everyone at the very beginning of the battle. It's nothing against him. It's just this does not relate at all to his position in the team and doesn't really make him a better character. It ends up becoming a very much of a novelty Zeta that if you put it on, it's just 20 mats gone that you really can't get back. So again, don't go all in just because he's a good character. He's a requirement for several things. He's used in a difficult mission. The Zeta itself does not make a difference. Very similar to Chrysanthemum, where it just ends up kind of being useless in the end when you look at its overall practicality. Next one is going to be GBA. Now, with GBA's, this is leadership we're talking about, by the way. While his leadership Zeta isn't entirely useless, it is very counterintuitive to how his kit works in both PvE and PvP. Again, a reminder, this is not about his unique Zeta. The unique Zeta actually is very good. It essentially brings out the Brute immediately, and that has advantages for a number of reasons, mostly that you get a pre-taunt right away and you don't have to summon him and use your clients. Anyways, not about that. That's good. Leadership. Why is the leadership bad? Basic abilities of Geonosis allies deal 10% more damage for each buffed enemy. At first, this kind of seems good because you're going to have everyone assisting at a turn every single time using their basic ability. The issue is, the whole point, or one of the whole points of using the Geonosis team is that they never let the enemy teams get buffs. If you start to look around on their kits, Geonosian Brute Alpha himself has a AoE buff dispel. His basic also dispels on crits. Sunfac also dispels on basic, which happens every single turn. On top of that, Spy will be able to delete all the buffs on his big special hit. So you're not only have the ability to get rid of all buffs constantly, but on top of that, you want to, because one of the whole control mechanisms of using the Geonosians is you go around and you make sure A, everyone's buffs are dispelled, B, they have tenacity down, and C, their ability block. You typically don't just pound one character until they're dead. You try to control the field and then let Spy take his hits and slowly snipe out members of the team. So what ends up happening is, I mean, you can apply the Zeta. It doesn't make the team worse. It's not totally useless, but it's just very counterintuitive to how it works, and it's going to very, very little change the difference of any of the outcomes, both in Geonosius territory battles as well as PvP defensively or offensively. So that is going to be GBA's leadership. Next up is going to be L3, and this one isn't, I have problems with this one. This one can come in handy, but there are situations where it's not just useless, it is actively bad. And what do I mean by that? So when we open her up, and I haven't applied this one specifically for this reason, her Zeta, at the first time each other droid ally is reduced to 1% health, they equalize health with L337. And there are some situations in some lineups you can use L3 in a droid team that is good. That's not really what this is about. The issue is this equalization makes it so that if a character gets hit so hard, let's say another droid, IG-88, just for simplicity, he gets hit so hard, he's reduced to 1%, and there's more damage coming in the same attack, it will still kill him. It's not a savior mechanic where the character gets to shoot up to 100% protection and health or whatever and can't be defeated in that one little turn. It just equalizes their health with L337s, which means that her health is going to go down. Sometimes this can be nice. Other times what will happen, and I've seen this happen multiple times, they will drop IG-88 down to 1% health, he will equalize with L3, he will take more damage and die, and L3 will be left with less health now because she equalized. So not only did the Zeta not really do anything because your IG-88 didn't survive that attack, but now on top of that you have a damaged L3 for really no gain at all. So again, it can be good in some situations, but I really don't like Zetas that can backfire on you. It's like, all right, I made that investment, and now I'm worse off for it in this specific match. It's just not a good feeling. Next up is going to really represent a larger category, and Grandmaster Yoda and Darth Maul are pretty good examples of this, and this is just outdated leads to be aware of. Whenever there's a really large faction like Jedi, Sith, Scoundrels probably fit pretty well into this too, and there's a leadership Zeta, be really wary, because even if the Zeta itself looks good, and maybe it might be, the factions are limited. We only have so many Sith, we only have so many Jedi in the game, and sometimes there are just 6 or 7 better leads, and you run out of units, and you can't actually make a team with this. Like Jedi, for example, Bastila, Jedi Knight Revan, both the 2 different Galactic Legends, Jedi Knight Luke, as well as Qui-Gon Jinn are all superior leads to Grandmaster Yoda. You're never going to use his own lead. Even if you do it for like, all right, I need it for this GAC month, you will never use it after this month because you will get a better one so quickly that he can be used in. And it's just, it's bad planning. It's not a good use of your resources, and you want to be saving it for other teams, even if you get Grandmaster Yoda towards the very beginning. Again, very similar to our good friend GBA. The Unique is very good. Do get that one. That's very nice to have. Darth Maul, just kind of the same exact example, except for Sith. We have a very limited number of Sith characters out there, and there are already 4 superior leads, Trey, Darth Revan, Malgus, as well as C. Even if you double up on some of those characters and put them into multiple teams, or into the same team, you're still only going to end up with about 3 Sith teams total. So it looks nice, sounds like it does some nice things, but ultimately, if you're going to have like a garbage Sith team at the end, just put Savage as Omicron and GAC, put Savage as lead, which is okay and doesn't require Zeta, and then put the other junk Sith in behind him, and it'll still call out something good. There's not really a reason to put this on. And furthermore, I actually wanted to put some other characters in this same category like Vader, but the issue I have with that, and I should say this as a caveat, is there are some ships in the game, or rather some pilots of ships, that the leadership Zeta is actually crucial for their interactions and mechanics as a pilot. Vader himself, he really needs that 1 extra speed against a negotiator comp for Empire to be able to beat really fast negotiators. So you don't necessarily need to slack in there, and his Zeta is actually a lot better than Darth Maul's is. But overall, all that to say, Darth Maul's ship really isn't important in any lineup at all, including Leviathan, which is Sith. So it was, if it had one home, that was probably supposed to be it. Next up is going to be Haldo. Although hopefully I think most people will know to avoid this one, but it just does way too little to even be effective. Realistically, the only team that Haldo even gets to be a part of is Rey, because most people only gear up to go after Rey, and then maybe you're trying to make as many teams as possible with Resistance, and you're not wanting to put other scoundrels with her because you want to make a scoundrel team too. So you stick Haldo there, and honestly, like this ability itself isn't that bad. When a Resistance ally loses Foresight, she gains Taunt. Like, that's actually pretty good. A passive Taunt, as well as 50 speed when she's not taunted, that's all good stuff. Like, I'm not really wanting to complain about that. But what the Zeta adds is just so little. When another Resistance ally loses Foresight, she gains 10% health. Cool, I guess. And then this is what makes me most sad, actually, because there's a huge opportunity here to make this really good. While Haldo doesn't have Taunt, all other Resistance allies have 20% critical avoidance. 20% is way too low for a team that does not really get critical avoidance from anywhere else. They have crit immunity on the Rey team, but not really critical avoidance. And this could have been nice if it was higher. Let's say it was somewhere around 60 or 80%. That could have made it so when JML or whatever other counter out there is trying to crit Rey to remove Inspired, they would really struggle with it because that amount of crit avoidance would stop it. 20% is just it's a drop in the bucket. You're not really going to change much of all else. And honestly, again, you're not even, most of the time, you're not even going to end up using Haldo in that team in the first place, which is actually going to be the problem with some of the other Zetas we're going to see here real quick. Next up is Moff Gideon, and this one really got confirmation of two things, actually really just one thing. There is going to be another Imperial Remnant leader coming out, another Gideon bag, if you will, Beskar armor Gideon. So his leadership is probably already going to immediately get shoved out. And even if it wasn't, I have this one, and gosh, it is stupid sad. Like, so first off, he has this really weird laundry list of requirements where everyone has to be Imperial Troopers, which I guess that makes sense, and then has exactly 1 tank, 2 attacker, and 1 additional support. Like, what team out there is asking specifically for 2 attacker allies? It is so wildly random. And then even if you give him that, even if you give him exactly what he wants, the team isn't good. Again, I've tried to use this before, specifically in 3v3, where you can actually branch out and make more trooper teams, because you can, at that point, you can have a good Iden team, you can have a good Veers team, and you can try to make a good Moff Gideon team, but I never even saw any results out of it. I gave him, I think it was Stormtrooper and Dark Trooper, trying to beat CLS because of the whole revive thing can just come back, or maybe it was Qui-Gon Jinn. I tried and both failed miserably. It wasn't a good day. Don't do his leadership. Again, unique, also very good. Next up is going to be Gamard, and Gamard is really deceiving because he doesn't quite fit the Magna fallacy where he's a good character, because he's not, but he fits closer into the Chrysanthemum where he's a part of a really, or he appears that he can be a part of a really good team. When you're first going after Jabba, especially if he's one of your first couple GLs, you're probably really low on units in general, and you're going to feel pressured to use Gamorrean Guard inside of that team. And quite frankly, his Zeta doesn't even appear all that bad right here, where it's, if the ally in the leader slot is Hutt Cartel, whenever another Hutt Cartel ally loses 70% health, while Gamard has defense up, he taunts and gains protection up for 2 turns, which at that point, it's a passive taunt, which we actually really like those. Royal Guard has a really good one. I think there's someone else. Oh, yeah. Baze, I guess, has one that's not quite as good. But overall, the issue with this is he just doesn't make the cut for best Hutt Cartel team. It's been tried several times. There was like a really small glimmer of time when Inquisitors were countering Jabba before Reva that he was nice because he encouraged timeouts. But overall, he just doesn't make that much of a difference. And if you have Embo, that's great. I realize a lot of people out there haven't gone for Lord Vader and therefore don't have Embo, but just like throw Boba in the team. He will do fine. He will do better than Gamard will, and also won't require you to put on an extra Zeta that you otherwise wouldn't have to. Whereas Boba, a lot of people have already made that investment. Also, there's a ship on top of it that's kind of cool. So just avoid Gamard in general, and then also don't apply a Zeta. Last and not really least is going to be Dangar. So Dangar is just, it's not entirely useless, but it ends up being pointless in all practicality. So if anyone who's ever used Dangar on a bounty hunter team, or they've seen it on defense or anything like that, he always just ends up being the last to die. He has a lot of stealth and recovery mechanics, and the dude is just really tanky in general. Like, I don't have him modded for any survivability in R5. He's already at over the 100,000 mark, as well as his defense isn't even that bad for a character that is very much not a tank. But that being said, his Zeta, if we go on to Grizzled Veteran, it means that he gets an extra 3% health protection whenever any of these effects are triggered. So whenever he gains stealth, whenever an enemy evades one of his attacks, and whenever he suffers a negative status effect, he'll gain a bunch of health and protection back. And this, I mean, again, it's not bad. It's not going to make your team worse. The only issue with it is he's always the last to die anyways. You don't need to give him extra health and protection because he's constantly hiding in stealth. He's not going to die from AoEs. He's also just not a priority target. If you're going after a bounty hunter team where they have like Boss, Grief, Mando, Zam, whoever, you don't focus Dangar. You get rid of Mando so you don't get disintegrated. You get rid of Grief so that they can't, or they stop cleansing your debuffs. You get rid of Boss so they stop mass assisting all of your characters. He's not a priority, and even if he was, it would be, quite frankly, pretty hard to kill him. So you don't need to give him the extra survivability via the Zeta. So hopefully this video was educational. Hopefully you guys learned something from it, and you can avoid the mistakes I myself have made. Until the next time, stay awesome.